everyone, it is Danny and welcome to this update. I hope that you are enjoying your day thus far. So we'll be taking a look at what is happening for Sean, but the main focus will be on Invest 94L. That is likely to head to the Caribbean, maybe as a tropical storm. Some models suggesting that it could strengthen into a hurricane, and so we'll be taking a look at all of that in this update, coupled with what is currently happening across the Caribbean and the rainfall activity expected through today. So let's get on with it, and we're kickstarting things looking at this imagery of the North Atlantic. So there you can see all that activity which has been moving out of Florida out into the Atlantic, maybe bringing some inclement weather to Bermuda, so maybe some gusty winds and some heavy rainfall at times. So that is what is going on right now for the Bahamas. Maybe mostly overcast conditions with some showers here and there, but for the most part there isn't anything crazy happening. As we head out into the main development region, there we can see Sean and 94L. So 94L isn't looking too good right now, but as we're going to be heading into early next week, environmental conditions will likely become more conducive and allow for development of the disturbance. But let's go to the Caribbean, and here you can see that there isn't much happening right now. Maybe some passing showers at the most through today, or a brief thunderstorm developing, but for the most part there isn't going to be anything crazy across the Caribbean islands, and that is reflected on the Euro's rainfall map. So this goes out to very early tomorrow morning. We can see that it isn't so colorful across the Caribbean islands, just some spots of some paler greens, so much rainfall activity is unlikely. But up to Florida and the northern Bahamas, we can see some of those shades of oranges and reds indicating some more substantial rainfall activity. But for most of the Bahamas, going to the Turks and Caicos Islands, much is not expected either. There may be a brief shower or thunderstorm popping up across Cuba, maybe near the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, Hispaniola, which includes Haiti and the Dominican Republic, going over to Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and across the Lesser Antilles. For Barbados, not seen where much is expected at all today, likely to be a sunny day, and down in Trinidad and Tobago, maybe a passing shower or so. ABC Islands, same story, much is not expected, and also for parts of eastern Venezuela and going to the Guyanas, we can see here that much is not expected. However, as we head over into western Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, even in some spots across El Salvador and Belize, going to Guatemala and Mexico, there could be some substantial rainfall, maybe even some very heavy downpours across some areas. But for the most part, nothing crazy is expected for the Bay Islands off Honduras, and even going offshore off Belize for Ambergris Caye, much is not expected. Now let's go ahead and talk about our systems, and firstly we're looking at this map here. So this is showing the dry air, which is represented by those shades of yellows, oranges, reds, and the more intense or the more vibrant you see the colors, that indicates a mass of denser dry air. For example, just off the African coast, there we can see that area of reds and oranges, so a lot of dry air there. That is shown out there, so we can see that it is battling some dry air as well as wind shear. So the wind shear has been taking its toll on Sean, which is the reason it is not a symmetrical storm and the reason it is not intensifying much. And across the Caribbean, we can see that there is some dry air stretching through, so this is kind of helping to stabilize conditions. One of the reasons we're not seeing much in terms of rainfall activity. But again, 94L is out there, it's not looking good right now. However, the concern is when it is going to be heading in a week's time, around Friday of next week, Thursday, Friday, thereabout. That is when it is likely to approach the Caribbean, maybe as a tropical storm, potentially as a hurricane. So some models are expecting that it may become a hurricane. It may either approach as a hurricane or strengthen more in the Caribbean, and that will only happen if conditions are conducive enough to allow for it to do so. As we look at the sea surface temperature map, here you can see that it is very, very warm. On approach to the Caribbean, we can see some of those shades of pinks, 30, 31 degrees, 29 degrees Celsius across some spots. That is going to help with intensification once other conditions are conducive, once the shear isn't too bad, and once there's a lot of moisture, then we will definitely see some intensification and potentially even rapid intensification. That is not out of the picture right now, but things are starting to cool down for the northern Gulf, of the Gulf Coast states, and even of the southeastern states of the US. Take a look at some of those green and yellow shadings representing lower temperatures. So as all these fronts move out, we're going to see this gradual cool down, because I mean, we're in the season season of autumn will be approaching winter in December. So the sea surface temperature across the Atlantic will gradually decrease. I mean, maybe not substantially, but they will decrease. Across the Caribbean, though, we can see that it remains pretty hot, especially the Western Caribbean, and some models are even sniffing at something trying to form over there. Now let's head on to our active cyclone, Sean, and we'll be looking at Invest 94L. So Sean is up first. Here is it on satellite. We can see here that it is not looking too good. It remains pretty sheer, disheveled, so it is not going to be intensifying much over the coming days and will likely dissipate by early next week. Not going to be a bother for anyone. And even as we take a quick glance at the cone forecast from the NHC, the latest, there we can see that the system is only going to gradually weaken and dissipate. There we can see that S, that represents tropical storm status. The D is for tropical depression status. And when we see that white circle, next, going to the southeast of Sean, disturbance 94L. So there we can see it, all those disorganized showers and thunderstorms associated with it. Now, last evening with the 2 p.m. update, the system had a formation chance of 40%, and now it is up to 60%. So we're seeing this increase in the potential of it to develop. So maybe as we're going to be heading into the middle part of next week, it might become a tropical depression on approach to the Caribbean. We see that the National Hurricane Center is keeping with this westward track expected of it. So it is just below being at a high chance of formation. So if the chance goes out to 70% in the 8 a.m. update, then there will be a high chance of development of this system. So Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, you want to keep watch for next week, headed to the latter part of next week. That is when the system is most likely going to be approaching. And speaking of the weekend, tomorrow will be that solar eclipse, so that link is left in the description. If you haven't seen my video, you can go ahead and watch it. I break down everything, even island by island, in terms of how much of the sun is going to be obscured for you, so you can go ahead and check that out. But going back to 94L again, it may develop, so conditions aren't the most favorable right now, but they will likely be. Let's take a look at some model data to see what models are forecasting. So we're kickstarting things looking at the Euro ensemble members. Now this goes out to Monday the 23rd of October. Take a look at the amount of these that are bringing the system in the Caribbean. So most of the ensemble members are taking the system into the Caribbean, potentially as a tropical storm. Some of these members want to show a hurricane out there. We're even seeing those hints of something trying to form in the West Caribbean, but as we can see, there isn't a lot of agreement on that. Heading on to the GFS ensemble members, same time, going to Monday the 23rd. GFS is showing that the system is likely going to be curving out before it makes its way in. However, there are some members which are taking it in, and GFS really is the only model out of the four I usually look at which is expecting that the system is going to be curving out and not bringing impacts to the Caribbean. So Euro remains consistent about it. Canadian remains consistent. Icon showing a very strong hurricane on approach, interestingly. And there we can see those hints of a West Caribbean system as well. So as I was saying, let's go on and quickly take a look at some of these other models. So this is the Canadian model. This is as we head to next Friday. So that is going to be the time when the model is expecting that the system will be approaching the Caribbean. There we see that low pressure area, likely a tropical storm. Now, if it approaches at this latitude, areas as far south as Guyana and even parts of Venezuela could feel impacts, not direct impacts, but there could be all that moisture feeding into the system, which may bring an increase in rainfall activity, even to Trinidad and Tobago. If that is the case, we're taking a look at forecasts now. We're talking about a week out from now, and we're bound to see some changes over the coming days. So this is not solid. As we head out to Saturday the 21st, there we see some strengthening in the Caribbean. So Canadian is not expecting strengthening until the system crosses into the Eastern Caribbean. If it enters the Caribbean, someone is getting hit. As we head out going to Monday the 23rd, we see that it is expecting that it will be moving up to the north, strengthening a bit more as it approaches the Leeward Islands, and eventually it would move out. Let's head on to the Icon model. Now this is the end of the 0Z Icon run. Take a look at this system. This is a pressure of 959 millibars. Potentially a system approaching major hurricane status right here. So Icon is showing that this will be intensifying. And how do we know that it is intensifying? Well, we're seeing a lot more of those black lines in that circular manner. So those black lines are isobars, and they join areas of equal pressure. Now that number you see, once that is decreasing and we're seeing these black lines being a lot more dense, that is indicative of intensification. So we're seeing that icon is expecting that a hurricane may be approaching, and this is not impossible, guys. So as I've been saying, once conditions are conducive enough, then there is that chance of some significant intensification. However, we're still talking about some time out, and as I said, we're bound to see some changes over the coming days, but it is important to watch the system as time goes by, and that is exactly what I've been doing for you. So I'll continue to do so. Stay tuned for my next updates coming this evening, and that is pretty much it for right now. I hope you found this video to be quite informative, but if you have any questions whatsoever, please do leave them in the comments. I will respond to you once I get the chance to do so. And remember to always be weatherwise.